Welcome to the Shortway Show. So happy that you are with me this evening. Yes, it's a little bit past 7 p.m. on the East Coast, and I'm back. I know some of you have missed me. I haven't been so active, but I'm active again. I must have missed you guys, or maybe I was just bored. I don't know. But anyway, I'm here today. Happy to have you with me. And I have today, I think, a very interesting guest, someone who is literally a Republican suing Donald Trump. I know that some of you might think, what? Does that really happen? Clearly it does. So I'm sure you're going to have many questions for him. I have many for him. It should be a very interesting show. We're bringing one right now. He is a tax attorney professionally from the great state of Texas, now a Republican candidate for president. The man himself, John Anthony Castro. How are you, sir?
Good. Thank you for having me.
Of course, yes. And I guess off the bat, you have literally put in a lawsuit against Donald Trump, trying to get him to, I guess, be, if I say the words right, be disqualified from running for president under the 14th Amendment, saying that he is now someone who has been part of an insurrection and therefore cannot run for president. Did I get that right?
Correct. Yes.
Why?
Yeah. So, I mean, it's the document we cherish. It's the United States Constitution. And, Section 3 of the 14th Amendment has sat there largely as a relic since 1868. And, we never thought that it would come up again, but, unfortunately it did. And one of the things that's really interesting about Section 3 of the 14th Amendment is it actually doesn't require that the individual directly or even indirectly participate in the insurrection. The mere giving of aid or comfort to insurrectionists is enough to trigger the disqualification clause. So why then there's tons of Republicans who don't like Trump, right? Lots of them who don't. They either want DeSantis or they don't like any of the new, they're more establishment Republicans or whatever the case may be. Why haven't, 25 other people done this? Why only you? Honestly, they just don't have the spine. They're pretty gutless. Okay. They say that they one day want to be the commander in chief, yet they don't have the guts to take on Trump. And so, to me, that's an automatic disqualifier. If you don't have the guts to stand up for what you believe in and stand behind your principles, and instead you just cower to, the man, then to me, it's just like that's automatic ineligibility. But yeah, it is sad, out of 300 million plus Americans that, there's only one willing to stand up and do what's required. And so, I decided it's going to be me. I'm going to step up to the plate. And I believe that this is why I was given, really good knowledge and solid understanding of the law and the Constitution. I studied at both, UNM, where I got my JD, and also Georgetown University Law Center in DC, where I got my LLM. So
yeah, but it's funny. You're not like a constitutional attorney. You're a tax attorney. It's kind of funny, right? I would have assumed that if this would have happened, it would have been from, some ivory tower lawyer at some PhD plan or so. That's what I would have thought, but clearly it's not. But you have, and this part was also surprising to me, but I guess it makes sense as I heard about it. You have been consistently anti-Trump since 2016. This isn't a new thing for you. You prefer, if I'm right, and please correct me if I'm wrong, you think the Republican Party should be more liberty leaning. It should be more about small government and more about, leaving social issues alone, that kind of thing. And you don't like where it's going right now. Am I accurate with that?
Oh, you're 100% accurate on that. And the Republican Party, I felt in the 80s was a big tent party, right? The libertarians had more of a voice. A lot of libertarian ideas were a part of the party platform. It was just this big umbrella. And little by little, the modern Republican Party has been shifting in a very scary direction, to where people that are more libertarian leaning are feeling more and more alienated from the party, as they just start going after things that, just make more libertarian minded people very uncomfortable.
Well, Justin Amash literally left the Republican Party. He was
Yeah.
like, "I'm done. I'm out." He actually left. But you actually, again, I guess this is impressive. Depending upon if someone doesn't like Trump, they're going to be mad at you when I say this. But assuming that they're just looking at your work ethic, you literally worked immediately to try to stop Roy Moore. You then also you were working with the Lincoln Project. I mean, you were trying to make things happen as soon as you saw this. As soon as you saw Trump win, you were like, okay, we got to change. You actually ran for office yourself, trying to knock somebody else off the ballot. I mean, I think you've been very active in this.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. I mean, look, when Trump got elected, I was against him, during the general election in 2016. I was very much against him. I wasn't exactly a Hillary fan either, but, I was kind of in the same boat as, a couple of other Republican commentators where they just felt really uncomfortable with Trump. And so after he got elected, I put out a message and basically, congratulations, Mr. President. I recognized he's our commander in chief now. We have to give him the benefit of the doubt. And I was just like, you know what? Maybe it's just hyperbole. It's just all the fear tactics of the campaign. He's going to moderate. He's going to be a good person now. And then Charleston happened, and that to me was just like, no. All my worst fears just came to surface.
You mean Charlottesville?
Oh yeah, sorry, Charlottesville.
Okay, gotcha.
So,
okay,
yeah, tiki torches. So yeah, I mean, at that moment, that's when I realized, like, nope, this man is everything I thought he was. He needs to be stopped. I came out a little vocal, too much to where I felt like it maybe painted a target on my back, and so I actually made a campaign contribution to Donald Trump to try to like smooth things over, and then I kind of went secretly underground and I started working with the initial resistance Republicans. And so the initial resistance Republicans formulated as a result of the Alabama special election. They had obviously they rallied behind, pedophile Roy Moore. And,
I remember.
We were just like, no, that's not going to happen. We're going to make a statement. And we felt that if, as much as it pained me, if we could flip Alabama and turn it blue, that would send a message as to how powerful the resistance Republican movement could be. And sure enough, we did. And so, we at that point, we realized just how powerful that we could be. And out of that.
So I guess where I'll go with that is, while I get that you wanted to stop Donald Trump, I understand that a lot of people want to stop Donald Trump. What made you decide to go that route to turn Alabama blue versus maybe getting someone to run against Roy Moore, beat him in a primary, or maybe go third party, go forward party, go Libertarian Party, go independent, like Jesse Ventura from Minnesota? What made you decide to go that route versus, a third party route?
We analyzed all options. So we did try to primary Roy Moore. It didn't work out.
Okay.
Everybody just came behind him. And then when Trump came in with, pretty much very deep pockets and the office of the presidency, we just knew at that point, the only option is Doug Jones. And Doug Jones, look, I mean, if you actually study the man's like politics, I mean, he's an Alabama Democrat, right? I mean, that's pretty much just like a light Republican. And so,
I know
it kind of like
I have the opposite issue. My Republicans are just Democrat light. So yes, I get the opposite issue.
So,
yes.
So yeah, I mean, we kind of look like, okay, it's not really going against any of our principles here. There's obviously a few things that, we don't agree with, but for the most part, it's better than Roy Moore, and it would send a really strong message to this growing MAGA movement. So yeah, that's why we got involved in that, and sent a really strong message there.
So now you try to make this happen. You're able to defeat Roy Moore. You run against Cornyn. That doesn't go as planned.
Yeah, that'll be honest. That was more of just a PR. That was way getting my name out there. I mean, it was like 35 days before the election. I filed the paperwork and everything. I spent no more than $25,000, like basically social media. So a lot of it was, just shameless self-promotion, trying to get my name out there. And it was actually 100% honest. It was actually just to get my name out there in preparation for the presidential run. Then the Congress in my area just happened to die from COVID. And that was totally unexpected. And so I saw that as an opportunity to, make a run. I mean, it was literally the only sitting Congress member in the entire United States to die from COVID was Ron Wright in my, district, so I kind of saw that as like, hey, well, I got to step up now and run. At that point, I still didn't really publicly come out strong against Trump because I didn't I didn't want to upset, the MAGA movement. The one that got a lot of media coverage was Michael Wood. But then he ended up at like 1.2%. And, I still ended up at like 5 or something like that. But, obviously, like I didn't get all the free media coverage on MSNBC and Newsweek and all these news agencies like Michael Wood did. And, that obviously didn't really help him too much. But my campaign was entirely grassroots. So every vote that we got, we earned. And even within the Republican Party, the fact that I showed up in the top 3 on the Republican side really freaked them out, because they were just like, who is this guy?
Right,
Out of
right,
nowhere,
sure.
without any party support whatsoever within the Republican establishment here in this district, and I was still able to do fairly well. So,
but now you're doing 2 things at the same time. You have the lawsuit going, and you're running for president.
Yeah.
Wow, that's a big deal. And from what I understand, this lawsuit you have is attacking Trump from multiple places, to where now not only is he going to deal with the stuff that's happening in New York with Alvin Bragg, but maybe in Georgia too. And now you're throwing more stuff at him, and you believe, and this to me sounds crazy to be forward with you. I mean, again, I'm ignorant. I could be totally wrong, but I'm telling you how it sounds. You believe that your lawsuit is going to go to Supreme Court. Please tell me why.
Yeah. So this issue and the mechanism and how Section 3 of the 14th Amendment works is a big question. And that's the issue currently before Judge Eileen Cannon in the Southern District of Florida, which Trump's attorneys are arguing that, look, the Constitution gives the court jurisdiction, but it's not a cause of action. Only Congress can create a cause of action.
Oh, got it. Okay.
So you have to cite a statutory provision, or I'm sorry, you have to cite the Constitution, and then you have to cite what statutory provision gives you the right to bring this cause of action. So they say without that statutory cause of action, I haven't stated really a claim that relief can be granted. You can't sue directly under the Constitution. That's actually wrong, because there is a Supreme Court case, the Bivens case. Mr. Bivens was raided by the Bureau of Narcotics back in the 70s, and he brought a direct lawsuit against the Bureau of Narcotics at that time, against unnamed agents. And his argument was they violated his 4th Amendment. The Northern District of New York tossed out the lawsuit and said, yeah, you can't sue directly under the 4th Amendment. It went to the U.S. Court of Appeals for the Second Circuit. They tossed it too. And they said, nah, get out of here. Like, you have to cite a cause of action. It went to the Supreme Court. The Supreme Court said, well, no, if we don't find an implied cause of action directly under the 4th Amendment, it renders the 4th Amendment entirely irrelevant. And so we can't say that, because basically it literally renders the 4th Amendment obsolete. And so they found an implied cause of action directly under the 4th Amendment. After that, there was a lot of other Supreme Court activity, or there was a lot of other litigation activity of people saying, well, what other amendments is there a direct action under? What about First Amendment political retaliation? What about?
And so you think that because of that, you're doing the 14th Amendment, and that'll push that forward all the way.
Exactly.
Got it. Okay. I get it. Okay. Now I get what you're doing. Okay, good.
So
all right.
This question goes all the way back to 1868. The first time that it was used, it was against none other than the president of the Confederacy, Jefferson Davis.
I do know that. Yep.
So Jefferson Davis, after the Confederacy resigned and surrendered, he was brought up on charges of treason. And so at that time, United States Supreme Court Justice Salmon P. Chase was the presiding judge over his trial. They decided to appoint him because, nobody would have more credibility in the United States than the Supreme Court Chief Justice. And so at that time, Jefferson Davis's lawyers came up with a very clever argument. They told Justice Chase, they said, Your Honor, this whole criminal action of treason against Jefferson Davis is actually unconstitutional because it violates the prohibition against double jeopardy.
Oh, right.
Mr. Jefferson Davis has already been punished for his crime of insurrection and war against the United States. And Justice Chase was like, how is that? And they said, well, when the United States adopted the 14th Amendment, they adopted Section 3. Section 3 effectively made insurrection a political crime, not an actual criminal crime.
So hold on. So with that in mind now, since Trump has been impeached but not removed, does that mean he has not been punished because he was not removed? Is
No,
that
no,
is that what that means?
no. So my argument is actually that the only means by which to hold the chief executive of the United States accountable is Section 3 of the 14th Amendment. Now,
Ah, okay.
that's me being totally honest. So if Jack Smith, and that's the special prosecutor, were to bring charges against Trump for insurrection or seditious conspiracy or anything like that, I believe that Trump's strongest argument would be that Section 3 of the 14th Amendment prohibits criminal prosecution because he's already been punished by a lifetime ban from public office. But obviously, he doesn't want to say that because then
Right.
he's going to
Because then he can't run.
self-disqualify himself. So
Right.
that's the interesting thing right now about the duality of Special Prosecutor Jack Smith's route and my route, which is that you have to have one or the other. You're
One or
either
the
going to
other,
be
right.
criminally prosecuted, or you're going to argue that you've already effectively been punished by the self-executing nature of Section 3.
So you're actually giving Trump an out in a way if he wants to, if Trump actually gets in trouble, because a lot of people think, now again, I'm not savvy on this part, so I could be off on this, but a lot of people think that there are a bunch of indictments coming down for Trump in the next couple of months. Now, if that is true, and so he could basically nullify all of them by accepting what you're saying.
Not at the federal level. So at the state level, it's a little bit different because at the state level, it's a separate infraction, right? Like the fake.
Oh, I got it. Okay.
Electors, so there was some falsification of official documentation that they submitted to the National Archives and all of that.
Got it.
Of course, they're going to
Okay.
argue they were just following proper procedure on how to submit electors, just in case the state legislature successfully overturned, the election votes in the House. But yeah, so that would be a separate infraction, and then also
understood. Okay,
separate as well.
That's different. Okay, thank you for clearing that up.
Yeah.
So let me keep walking down this road. You not only believe that this might go to the Supreme Court, but you also believe that regardless, you can sue individual states, telling those states that, look, the 14th Amendment is in play here. You can't have Trump on your ballot.
Mm-hmm.
And you think that certain states like Arizona and Pennsylvania, to name a couple, maybe more, would literally go, you're right, and throw him off.
Oh, yeah.
Now, the question I have here is, would that happen after he already has the nomination?
It could.
Or would that happen before? In other words,
no,
if this starts happening before the nomination, my assumption is Republicans would see the writing on the wall and not nominate him and would go with whoever, DeSantis or whoever is the top of the line. You, if you're on top at that point, right? Whoever's on top, they're going to go with the other guy, right? Is my assumption. But if it happens after Trump wins a nomination, again, assuming that he does, who knows if he will, but assuming that he does, then that would literally be like just a Democrat in Pennsylvania, just a Democrat in Arizona, an automatic win for Democrats. Am I correct here or no?
No, so we have to wait until both Trump and I are registered to be on the ballot in those states.
Got it. Okay.
So the Secretary of State, for example, in Arizona, he can't make the call on Trump's eligibility until Trump actually submits an application to appear on the ballot. That won't happen until November, December, or even January in Arizona, whenever the filing for that particular state opens. So when that filing opens, Trump is there. He submits his ballot application with all the petition signatures, all the requirements. My team is there as well. We submit the same exact ballot application. And at that moment, we're both candidates. I have standing to bring an action against him. So then, of course, I file a grievance with the Arizona Secretary of State challenging his eligibility. And then the Arizona Secretary of State gets to decide. Now, the United States Court of Appeals for the Ninth Circuit, which covers Arizona, has already ruled that the Arizona Secretary of State has the unilateral discretion to make a call regarding eligibility. So he can make the call to kick him off the ballot. And then Trump's only recourse is to take it all the way to the Arizona Supreme Court and to see if he can get that overturned. Now, that same ruling doesn't apply in Pennsylvania, for example, but that's kind of the interesting issue, and Pennsylvania, I would say, is more of a sure thing as well as Wisconsin, just because the Supreme Courts are controlled by Democrats. So I don't see them siding with Trump and wanting to keep him on the ballot. So yes, these are going to be very early, and it's going to be late this year, pretty much when, like I said, when the filing opens. So late this year or early next year. But most likely it's going to be around November, December of this year.
Wow. Let me take one of the comments because I think it just hit it perfectly. The scientific libertarian says Donald Trump being kicked off the ballot will be the most libertarian thing that he's ever done. Which is true. I mean, that's an accurate statement. Libertarians get kicked off the ballot all the time. So yes, that will be the most libertarian thing he's done. So there we go. We're in business now. Yeah. So, but I guess the other part is what you're saying seems to make sense to me. And it piqued my interest immediately once I heard it. There's got to be other Republicans who are thinking, this guy could be right. This might work. They've got to be coming after you, aren't they? Aren't they like, I don't know, smearing you or trying to find dirt on you or something?
No, it's only the Trump camp. I can say that pretty much there's a lot of Republicans out there. See, Trump has support from the grassroots, right?
Yep.
Not from the party establishment. The people within the party establishment that support him are supporting him out of political calculation, not out of actual genuine support. And so it's one of those things where, like, okay, publicly, I'm not going to really condemn this guy, but I'm also not going to support him either. So it's one of those things where they're all just going to kind of sheathe their swords and step back and just be like, yeah, let's just kind of see where the cards fall on this. So
you think, if I hear you right, you then think that if this actually does begin to work and they can see it and they feel comfortable, that a bunch of people will turn and be like, you know what? We never liked Trump. We were just kidding. And they're going to go and jump on either your train or the DeSantis train or some other train, but not the non-Trump train.
Yeah, correct.
But aren't Democrats going to be mad at you? And you've said this, and I agree with you. I think Democrats want Trump to be the nominee. I mean, I think the advantage that Democrats have, even if Trump wins the presidency, I mean, I don't know if he can, but even if he does, Democrats across the country will always use Trump as the boogeyman, right? Mm-hmm. Oh, you got to vote for me because Trump's going to come kill your babies or whatever is the thing they say of the day, right? He's going to slash your tires. Whatever they say, Trump's always the evil man, orange man bad. Democrats can just bring up Trump and fix nothing. And it's been working for them for literally years. So I think you're right. They want Trump to stay in the world, to keep being the evil bad guy they can point to whenever they screw up. They can just point at Trump and go, well, I'm not him. So how do you stop Democrats from trying to stop you? If they figure out, oh my God, it's working, we got to get rid of this Castro guy. He might get rid of our boogeyman.
Yeah, exactly. So I've read a few funny things online where they suggest, like, oh, he's a sleeper mole from the Democrats. And it's kind of like, no, Democrats hate me. Trust me.
No,
they want me to stop. They want me to stop. There have already been the attempts to kind of like try to buy me off and basically be like, look, you're going to be doing more harm if Trump is basically, if you stand down, let Trump become the nominee, he's going to burn the entire Republican Party to the ground. And we're going to see the biggest, blue wave takeover that there's ever been. And that is absolutely a true statement. But if I was,
you actually believe that? You think that if Trump gets the nomination, that there'll be a massive blue wave? You think that's true?
Yeah, I do.
Why? I don't. I'm not saying you're wrong. I'm just saying I don't see it as so obviously as you do. Why do you think that's true?
I would say it's in the suburbs. It's just suburbia America. They don't like it. They liked the idea when politics was, once every 4 years. If you were really into it, once every 2 years. They don't like politics in their everyday lives. They just don't like it. You know what I mean? And they're happy to have somebody in there that's just kind of quiet and mild tempered, and they just want politics as usual. And so it is kind of sad because I see where Trump is coming from with regard to the anti-bureaucratic state, which I support very, very much. And it's way out of hand. The deep state is way out of hand and needs to be reined in tremendously. But
Trump has some very good rhetoric that a lot of people love. In fact, one of my people here, Sonia, says, I love Trump. She's not alone. A lot of the people who watch this show are hate watching you right now, right? They are. It's true. Some people are loving it and are happy that you're doing this, and some are hate watching you right now. It's true. A lot of people love Trump. Particularly when I go upstate New York, when I travel upstate New York, there are certain areas that I go in New York, heavily farm country, where you'll see 3 farms in a row where each farmer has literally painted his entire barn Trump. His whole barn. You drive by 3 barns in a row, painted Trump. You go into a city, any city upstate New York, or of course New York City where I live, And it's just they hate Trump. Just, oh my God, he's the worst thing in the world. And every problem that every is because of Trump. I see those dichotomies. Absolutely.
And I would say that when it comes to Trump's policies, I have very little objection to the vast majority of his policies. I think they were good for America. I think they were good for rural America. I think they were good for blue collar workers. Main Street America. I really liked that because it was bringing the Republican Party back down to its roots in rural America, in bootstrap, people that pick themselves up by their own bootstraps. And so I get the allure, I get the appeal, and also, right, the anti-corruption as well,
Yes.
anti-deep state, I loved that. What I didn't like is the playing into the racial tensions. And as much as people try to say like, oh no, that was the Democrats, it was both. It was both. And I felt like he had an opportunity to rise above it and he didn't. And I felt like he's really stoked a lot of the culture wars as well. And I feel like that's just a distraction from actual policies where energy could be focused on. I mean, because right, when you get elected to the presidency, people don't realize this, but I mean, you only have about 1,300 days that you're in there, and you can't spend all of them on these, BS culture wars. It's like focus on actual policy, focus on, improving America's farmlands, doing something. I mean, he was president for 4 years. Come on, you didn't increase minimum wage once. You didn't change anything with regard to, the exploitation of agricultural workers, and it's so. As much as there was a lot of
but those policies you just brought up are not mainstream Republican policies.
Oh yeah, unfortunately,
right. Those are much more. I mean, Democrats don't do anything either. But Democrats talk about that at least, right? Democrats will talk about. They won't do anything, but they'll talk about stuff. Republicans don't even talk about that. I mean, for you to say that as a Republican, I think most Republicans would be like, "Why is he talking about that? Isn't that what Democrats talk about?" I mean, no one's going to fix anything. They've taught us that, but the talking points, those aren't Republican talking points.
Yeah, and it goes back to the basics. Barry Goldwater's Conscience of a Conservative. One of the first books that I read, and that really, formed the basis of my political philosophy. And what I believe. And so, I just really feel that the Republican Party has really lost its soul, and I feel like
you've actually go to one place also, which I think you've said some stuff which is controversial, but I agree. But it is controversial. You've said you think there are judges, two types on the Republican side. One that really want to defend Trump and protect him, and another set that you think would be very happy to get rid of him and create a path for DeSantis.
Oh, yeah.
I don't want to believe that's true, but I absolutely believe that's true.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. And I mean, on the 11th Circuit, I believe that the votes are there. We're going to see. They were supposed to rule, they were scheduled to rule this coming Monday, the 24th, whether to disqualify Judge Cannon. We had forgotten to file an independent or separate certificate of person, so I don't know if that's going to reset the 30 days. But we are going to have a substantive ruling on this within 30 days. That's for sure. Possibly even this Monday. And at any moment, Judge Cannon could also rule on the motion to dismiss. We don't really see how she could dismiss on standing, but so she would have to find standing, but then say that she doesn't believe there's an implied cause of action under Section 50 of the 14th Amendment. But if she rules on that, that is what then streamlines it for appellate review. So after that,
that goes right to the appeals, right?
Yep.
Got it.
And then within 60 days, the 11th Circuit has to rule. And so we'll have a ruling within 60 to 90 days tops. And right after that is the writ of certiorari to the U.S. Supreme Court. And so that's the moment when the Supreme Court would then have the opportunity to decide. They could choose not to. That would be very strange if they did. But either way, at that point, we would immediately activate the part of the litigation strategy, which then shifts over to the states. And so all the litigation and everything would shift at that point. But that, like I said, wouldn't happen until late November, December, when everything filed.
Let me grab a little bit of admin if I could. Guys, if you're my audience, you're listening and you're watching this, do me a favor, click this like button. If you think it matters and you think people should see this, then click the like button. It does matter. It's how I get past the algorithms that I need to get past so we can move this show forward. Also, do me a favor, if you're watching on YouTube and you want your comment to get to the front, you can super chat me if you want to on Larry Show YouTube if you want to. If you're watching this on Twitter, please retweet this right now. Don't wait. Stop looking at me. Hit that retweet button right now. Retweet it. It does matter. The more people who see this, the better this is. Please do it if you can. And something else. John has come here and he's given us some time. He's given us some love. So give him some love. Head over to johncastro.com. That is his website. Or you can follow him on Twitter if you like at Real John A. Castro on Twitter. All of his information is in the description on both Facebook and YouTube. If you want to see what he's doing, please follow him. Click that like button so we can keep going. So, John, I want to ask the crazy question now. Why run for president? In other words, you could do this and do anything else. Do this and just run your business. Do this and run for Congress. Do this and run for governor. I mean, there's many ways you could do this. You've chosen to use a lawsuit and run for president. Why?
I'll just be honest. Saw an opportunity. I mean, that's what we learned at what I learned at Harvard Business School. Entrepreneurialism is really where opportunity. When you spot an opportunity, you have to take it. And so, I spotted an opportunity here to where this lawsuit could end up being historic. There's only 2 cases that have ever been ruled on Section 3 of the 14th Amendment: Jefferson Davis and now Castro v. Trump. And so we'll see how it goes. But at least in the law books, it's going to be forever noted, right? Because it's either going to say there is no implied cause of action, and that kills that route, or which is odd because that would contradict the established case from Jefferson Davis. But alternatively, it does. It ends up disqualifying him and becomes extremely historic. I know that in the meantime, I am going to be an outcast in the Republican Party, right? Everyone's going to try to disassociate themselves from me
Absolutely.
as much as possible. But I feel that with time, as the Republican Party becomes a big tent party again, people are going to look back and realize that what I did saved the Republican Party from itself. And I believe they'll come back and I'll be tapped. And at that point, I might run again. I'm 39 years old right now. And this is going to be my first campaign for the presidency in the United States. I think Joe Biden's first campaign, he was 41. So, hopefully it's not until I'm 76 when I get elected. But
yes.
But I'm going to do what's required of me. John F. Kennedy asked not what your country can do for you, but what you can do for it, and that's what I'm doing right now. If I was a partisan hack and I wanted Democrats to win, I would let Trump become the nominee. If I wanted to be popular within the Republican Party, I wouldn't be suing Trump. So clearly, I'm not making friends in either party right now. But again, 2020 is, or hindsight's 2020. So I think, like I said, enough years passed, 8, 12 years passed, they're going to look back and realize.
So you are really playing the long game here.
Oh, absolutely.
You really are. Okay, let me take a couple comments if I could. Let's see. Patty agrees with the Trump orange man bad thing. She says, absolutely, Larry. The meteor heading to Earth is the orange man's fault. And even my blue friends, I think she means blue. Yeah, blue meaning as in Democrat. My blue friends are tired of the 1 year we're red and 1 year we're blue. Yeah, I do think we're just going back and forth, which is why I brought up third party, right? Because obviously I'm biased. I'm a libertarian. I ran as third party, and I'm a big fan of running third party. The Forward Party backed me last time I ran too, so I'm a big independent party, third party guy. My biases are open, at least you'll see them. So yes, that's why I asked that question. I think many people who watch this show are always like, well, why isn't he doing third party? We want him to do third party. So there's a bias there, John. That's also, you're aware of that. There is a bias here. I do also, go ahead.
I would say in the future, I would definitely be open to considering it. For now, it's one of those things where I really want to stand my ground and fight for what I believe the Republican Party should be. Now, if the Republican Party, coalesces behind Trump and just uniformly, rejects me, and then we'll see. We'll see where things go. But yeah, I mean, I think for now, I want to try to get the Republican Party back to where it used to be, which is again, a big tent, small government, staying out of people's personal lives, and just trying to help everybody be self-sufficient and independent.
Pete always does this. He always wants us to know there's the national debt. So I read it out. National debt, $31,456,614,505,854.44. In case someone didn't know that, now you do. Yes, we do find that being a problem. So let me go, if I could, for a bit to you, right? I see what you're doing while you're doing it, but you have some fears. And one of your fears is the idea of a uniparty, of one party rule. And boy, in New York, I understand that. In New York, we have that. We have one party rule, and it is nothing but hurtful. It just makes the party worse. It makes the state worse. It makes everything worse. Democrats keep voting for Democrats, and Democratic establishment does nothing Democrats want, but Democrats keep voting for them. Republican Party in my state is completely broken. You may not know this, but in New York State, a Republican has not won a statewide election of any type in 22 years. Where I live in New York City, AOC is my congressperson. I accept your condolences. So in my district where I run at a state level, the Republicans haven't run a candidate in 12 years. They run a candidate. And the last time they ran a candidate, he lost by 70 points, not 17, 70. He lost 85-15. And they hadn't run a candidate 10 years before that. So I get what you're saying. You are correct. But you bring this up. So how do we fix that if John Castro is running for president?
You know, it's tough, but there's been, you know, as we know, and it's on both sides. It's a lot of gerrymandering. Yep. And unfortunately,
Oklahoma is run by Republicans.
Yeah.
Yeah, 100%. So, New York's run by Democrats. Oklahoma's run by Republicans. Completely true. Yep.
Yeah. And it's really been the Supreme Court, right? I mean, they haven't stepped in and set rules because they feel like, oh, well, this is like a political question and we don't want to get too involved. And I feel like sometimes I get the political question doctrine and what it's grounded in, but sometimes I feel like it's a cop-out, you know, to basically spineless and not to take any, you know, sort of corrective action. And I feel like this is an area that really needs a lot of corrective action. There needs to be more involvement. And, you know, unfortunately, it's just not there. But
are you a fan of the I guess, Forward Party's been bringing this up a lot. Many libertarian presidential candidates have been bringing this up also. I don't know if you're part of it. Do you like the idea of ranked choice voting?
I was just about to say that, ranked choice voting. Yeah. Definitely.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, absolutely.
So also easier ballot access, more open primaries, these types of things. Are these the type of things that you would support as a presidential candidate or no?
Oh, absolutely. I mean, look, like it's a two-party system that's rigged, right? I mean,
yes.
If you look at the ballot access laws, I don't know how some of those are constitutional. I really don't. And so it needs to be enshrined in the Constitution. You know, unfortunately, that's, you know, kind of pie in the sky stuff because it's really hard to amend that. But yes, a lot of these states. And here's the thing that I noticed too, because when I was getting ready to sue Trump, I had to brush up on election law. And
sure,
you know, people that I work with are always freaked out how easy I can learn things. Right? I just buy a book and I read it from cover to cover, and I'm like, all right, I'm an election law expert now. And I can tell you that a lot of these election laws are in fact unconstitutional. It's just that nobody's had the guts to take it to court, or not so much the guts, but I think the brains. You know, they didn't go to law school like I did, and so I went to law school. I know these.
Well, I would argue one more thing: the judges are in on it.
Yeah, they could be. And
I literally went to court 9 times last year with election court lawyers and myself, election law lawyers and myself, and we were told no 9 times, even after we proved that we were correct. Some of the judges didn't bother reading anything, just told us no outright. We had one judge actually say, oh, no, these laws are on purpose so that people who can't win don't get on the ballot. He actually said it out loud.
Yeah.
So yes, what you said, and they're in on it, both.
Yeah, exactly. And I've seen that too, right? I mean, I've seen a lot of corrupt judicial rulings at the lower level. And that's the reason why a big part of my practice has focused on appellate practice. That's how I hold local corrupt judges accountable. I love writs of mandamus. I already have 2 pending in the Trump case.
Tell us what that is.
Oh, writ of mandamus is when a judge does something that's clearly against the rules or in violation of the Constitution. You file a writ of mandamus with the U.S. Court of Appeals for that district, that circuit, and then the circuit judges can get involved and overturn that judge and order them to do something in compliance with the Constitution. And it also it's a shot across the bow of the federal judge as well to let him know, like, hey, you know, you're not God. You know, you will. I will make sure that every decision you make that I feel violates the rules, will be reviewed by an appellate court, and not at the end of the case, in the actual middle of the case with a writ of mandamus. So that's how you get around the whole interlocutory appeal limitations.
Well, now there's a second piece about you that I think is interesting is you're currently a successful tax attorney with a successful law firm, but you've also been a union organizer. And while you went to a pretty ritzy school, you didn't come from wealth. That's an odd combo. How does a guy go from not coming from money to ritzy school to union organizer to tax attorney? How does that work?
Yeah, a lot of debt. My youth is extremely liberal, extremely liberal. I would say that I was extremely far left when I was a teenager. And
okay.
I mean, I think that's common. I've heard that from a lot of my Republican friends. They're just like, there's this old saying that they told me, what is it? If you were young and you weren't liberal, then you didn't have a heart. If you're older and you're not Republican yet, you don't have a brain.
Right. I've heard that too. Yep.
But yeah, I mean, I had a very, very liberal youth, and I started. I went to Pittsburgh with the United Steelworkers of America. I became a certified union organizer. I came back, started by organizing the sanitation workers in Webb County, Texas. We increased. We set a living wage for county workers. I started the living wage campaign, all of that. So I was very much, out there marching in the streets. I was one of those, teenagers holding the signs that says, tax the rich, feed the poor. Then I go to law school on all these student loans, right? I graduate with about $350,000 in student loans.
Wow.
And I wanted to actually be a product liability litigator because I got very interested in that when I looked into the background of Ralph Nader when he was running.
Sure.
And so I was just like, that's very noble practice. But then I found out you need a lot of money to finance those litigation cases, and I didn't come from money, so I was kind of like, crap. And then I took tax law, and my professor, because they always told me that in my undergrad they wanted me to be a mathematician, but I was just kind of like, nah, I want to be a lawyer. And so I went to law school, and then I took tax law, and I aced it. And my professor was just like, man, you need to major in tax law. And I was like, nah, that sounds boring. I want to do litigation, like like appellate practice, or something like that, argue before the Supreme Court, which I might now do. But
maybe you will.
Yeah. And then he said, well, tax attorneys are the highest paid attorneys of all attorneys in the field. And my ears went up because I was already like, at that point, getting out of the JD program, I was at about 275. And then it was another 75 for the LLM at Georgetown. So that's why then I got out at 350. So yeah, when I found out it was a high paying, area, that's when I was like, all right, I'll do that.
Got it.
And I ended up coming out of Georgetown, just absolutely. At that point, I was like,
so, but hold on. Why start your own firm?
So I was in practice. I worked for Clifton Larson Allen for about 6 months. I'm just gonna be really blunt. It took me 6 months to realize I was smarter than everybody there.
Okay.
And I just realized, you know what? I'm coming up with all these ideas. I came up with 3 ideas that I would say probably made the firm over $10 million in 3 or 4 months.
Wow.
And so that's where I was just like, you know what?
And they didn't offer you partnership?
People rich, and I get a flat paycheck, and that's all I get to go home with. So,
wow.
So yeah, at that point, I was just kind of like, no, wow. I'm out. And
okay.
Yeah, started my own
practice. I appreciate that. That's honest. I respect your honesty, man. And look, I'm a libertarian. I'm not mad at you making money. I want us all to make money. I'm with you 100%. So you got a fan here. The Messianic Minarchist says, interest is peaked. Looking forward to Mr. Castro in the debates. So hopefully you'll get in debates and people will see you.
Oh,
Gene says,
well, I can tell you, if I get into the debate, sparks are going to fly.
Yes. Gene says the duopoly makes the laws. They will never make ballot access available to anyone who might threaten their power. I think there's something there. Go ahead.
Yeah, I agree with that, but that's why we have the federal judiciary. And there was a woman, I think it was a woman, I just know the name Fulani. It was in the 70s and 80s. She brought a lot of lawsuits, and so many of her, as I was reading election law when I was brushing up, last year in anticipation of this case, I saw so many cases by this woman named, or I believe it's a woman by the name of Fulani, and she had the guts to bring cases left and right. But what made her unique is that she was she was very targeted, and she loved appellate practice like I do. And so
Mm.
if she would always get negative rulings at the lower level, but then she would take it to the First Circuit, the Second Circuit, and she would get the judges overturned. And it wouldn't be 100% victory on her part, but it would start shaping the direction of the law more favorably. So
Got it.
a lot of the ballot access, some of the good things in ballot access are a direct result of her. And that's kind of what I want the next 4 to 8 years of my practice to focus on. Like I have my tax practice, but then this is just going to be my personal fun stuff.
Right.
I'm going to basically identify states that I feel have unconstitutional ballot access laws, and then
New
just
York,
file in that
New
state.
York, New York.
Yeah, I'll look at it.
There we go.
Yeah,
Yes.
basically, I'm going to identify states where I think that there's an opportunity to be like, no, this is too restrictive, it's unconstitutional, and basically just go there, register, to be a candidate. That way, I got political standing, and at that point, I can start challenging some of these. So yeah, trust me. As I was reading through federal election law and case history, I was really shocked at how undeveloped it is. And I think it's and look, here's the other thing too that I wanted to correct earlier. I said a lot of people don't have the guts to like bring court cases. I take that back. They don't have a law degree, and to finance these cases is extremely expensive.
Yeah.
So I get it. I actually tried to find an election lawyer to take my case against Trump. No Republican election lawyer would take the case because they said, if I take the case, I am banished from the Republican Party. I will get zero business from them. I went to the Democrats and I was like, hey, anybody want to get Trump kicked off? And they said no, because our party platform wants him to be the candidate.
Right, exactly, yes.
It's kind of like, I'm SOL, right? Like, so that's
Absolutely.
when I ordered an election law book, and I was like, all right, well, I guess I'm going to have to figure out how to do this on my own, because no partisan election. And what I found out is every election lawyer is partisan. They all pick sides. And even the ones that are like on the libertarian camp, they're mainly there, probably out of political philosophy, but also they know that they're going to get all the business, right? They're like one of only 3 attorneys that
right. That's how it is in New York. There's like 4 guys we can use. You're totally correct. Yes. Absolutely.
And so they realize that they're always going to have business, and so I just basically I'm going to be like a one-man nonprofit.
Do you mind if I take a couple of comments that are going to ask about your policies? You okay with that?
Yeah, absolutely.
Joe asks, thoughts on the Second Amendment? Take the guns first, then due process, as Trump said?
So here's the thing. Let me start by saying that I am so far in support of the Second Amendment that I think you should get a tax deduction or even a tax credit for purchasing your first firearm.
You have just made everyone in my chat love you. You just won. You just won. They love you now.
I think that look, Democrats want gun locks, right? And gun safes. Make them tax deductible. Problem solved. Everybody's
Here we go.
Yeah, I mean, if you're so concerned, then let it be on the taxpayers' dollars. So that's one thing that I support. Now, on that note, so I know everybody's like really loving me right now. This is where they're going to hate me a little bit. At the same time, the Second Amendment opens by stating a well-regulated militia. So I do think that it's a little bit too dangerously easy to purchase a weapon. I think there should be more extensive background checks. I do think that there should be mental health checks. Red flag laws, they need to be developed. And unfortunately, they can only be developed with case law. And I understand the concern with that comment, right? It's just like, hey, I don't like the idea they're going to take my guns first, and then I have to go before a judge. Might be some far left liberal. And then, that's it. I can't get my guns back because, some ex of mine said that I threatened her, and even though there's no evidence of it or something like that. So I get where that's coming from. And I believe that is where we need to sit down and reach across the aisle and say, hey, look, guys, these are our concerns. Let's work out these concerns, right? Because if you're going to take a gun first and then give the person the due process, that's a little bit dangerous, and we need to make sure that it's not open to abuse.
Okay.
So it needs to be.
I'm glad you gave me honest opinion.
Yeah. If somebody were to submit a complaint, it should be a verified complaint. What that means is that if it turns out to be a lie, that person will be criminally prosecuted for perjury. So that would be the first thing that absolutely has to be done. So there has to be a recourse in the event that there's a false accusation, because if not, then anybody can just accuse somebody they don't like, and that way they get their guns taken away. And I do not like that. So we have to put in those anti-abuse measures within the red flag laws that are currently lacking in a lot of states. And so, when people bring that up, I say that is 100% legitimate excuse. And that's why, as they are currently drafted, I don't support red flag laws, but I do support the idea and the philosophy behind it, which is that there should be some sort of way to do a quick corrective action in an actual legitimate emergency situation.
I think you might have lost half of them. You had some, you lost half of them. It is what it is. So Nicholas asked, what will you do about our crumbling infrastructure? I hear this all the time. This is a question that people say, whether if you're in the left or the right, they always ask the same question. Stuff's failing here in America. Our airlines suck. Our rail lines suck. Everything seems to suck. Our roads suck. Is this something the president can do, should do, can do? What do you think?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, the problem is that, Trump had it. He actually brought it up. He wanted to do an FDR style, public works project, bring back kind of like the PWA. And yeah, absolutely. I'm in support of that. I really think that the government, see, the problem is that I get where some of my Republican colleagues are coming from, where they're just like, they're absolute purists about hands off, right? Like, no, this is something, that the government shouldn't be too involved in. But the problem is that when you actually look at how the local bidding systems work for like building roads and bridges, basically incentivizes building crap roads and
100%.
Because
totally
the
correct.
more they break, the more that they get the contract to fix it. And so it's just a rigged, corrupt system.
It's true.
So, that's why FDR saw that too. And he was just like, screw this. I'm just going to go directly, you tax dollars and directly fund these public works projects. Let's rebuild dams. Let's identify every waterfall in the area in the entire United States. Let's turn it into a hydroelectric dam. There's a lot that we can do here to where it doesn't have to be just an expense. It can be an investment with an actual return. And so that's what we need to do. We need to just bring our brains together and come up with these creative ideas on how we can do this. One idea that I had that I absolutely love and cherish, and I'd love to share with the audience, is I actually kind of liked, well, I don't want to call it the Green New Deal because, that phrase has been tainted by AOC and her group. But
yes,
it's kind of like the New Deal. But what I wanted to do was actually put the manufacturing jobs in West Virginia and the Appalachia area. So they would be constructing wind turbines and solar panels, get them out of the coal mines and into an air-conditioned manufacturing facility. And that way they'd be in support of green energy, right? Because now it's bringing them jobs. Because I know out in Appalachia, right, the coal mines is the only way that you can go from working class to middle class and send your kids off to college. And so, we all know that coal isn't good for the environment. But at the same time, the only thing that matters to people out in Appalachia is what's paying the bills. So you have to replace those jobs with equal or better paying jobs and a better working environment, right? Nobody wants to get, the black lung out in a coal mine, rather be an air-conditioned facility making wind turbines and solar panels to be used in America. But the problem is that, Obama tried something similar, but it was with loans instead of direct government action. And then, the whole cylinder thing just turned into a big scam. And so it's just like, look, that's why you need to do the FDR way, which is just direct boots on the ground, paid by with federal tax dollars. None of these loans and intermediaries. Then you just invite corruption.
Okay. You're FDRing and you're running as Republican. Seems odd.
Yeah.
Okay. Okay. Seems good. Okay. Oh, good. Kathy has a very important one. She says the government has failed our children. Specifically, Kathy's, her son recently passed. Our kids are dying from fentanyl poisoning. So you've got to hear this as you cross the country and cross your state. You've got to hear people saying fentanyl. How do we handle that? How does a president handle that? Or does he?
Yeah. No, he does. He does. Absolutely. So, first, Kathy, really sorry for your loss. From what I've heard, just in my district, there is, again, a lot of corruption. I have had a lot of people messaging me, police officers messaging me, telling me my captain is on the take, my lieutenant is on the take.
Whoa!
My chief is on the take. They're protecting these distributors. That's why they're able to operate, with pretty much like imperviousness, right?
Now, I want to ask this question because I'm ignorant here. Is that a Texas thing or is that an American thing? Do you know?
I think it's an American thing. The thing is,
American thing.
It's deep pockets, right? I mean, like, we know about it now because we've had time to study it, but we know that the American mafia in Chicago and New York, they had half, if not 3/4 of the police department on the payroll, and a lot of people think like, oh, well, that was back then, it's just like, they just got better at hiding it.
Okay.
So there needs to be, I don't know if you've seen the movie American Gangster with Denzel Washington,
Yep.
there
Absolutely.
needs to be a Russell Crowe type in every single American city that starts taking down all these corrupt police officers and start holding them accountable. Because at the end of the day, it's just law enforcement is not doing their job, and it's not the rank and file, the ones that are out there in the street, actually trying to make a difference. It's the bureaucrats in the office. It's the lieutenants and the captains, the chiefs. A lot of them, make some very questionable moves, questionable allocations of resources, and it seems to a lot of people, even police officers on the ground, that they are protecting these people. So, this is where we need just like in the movie American Gangster with Russell Crowe, like we get that direct federal involvement, and, we start holding these people accountable. And I think that would get more towards the root. And once you get rid of their police and political protection, then you can start, hauling them all into jail and definitely upping the sentencing. Some of them, end up getting 2 years and then they get released, they get sentenced to 5 to 10 years, but then they're released after 2 years for good behavior. So when it comes to those types of things,
when you say the 2 years release, are you talking about corrupt cops, or are you talking about drug dealers? What are you talking about?
Drug dealers. Yeah.
Dealers.
A lot of these dealers will just have a sob story, right? Like, oh, I was just down and out and I needed this for my ailing mother or something like that. And it's just kind of like, we need, and I'm not a big supporter of mandatory minimum sentences at all. Not when it comes to mere possession and things like that. But to me, when you're a drug dealer, absolutely. There should be minimum mandatory sentences.
So you think mandatory minimums for drug dealers?
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely.
What if the outcome of that has a racial bias, right? What if you have that law, the law itself isn't racist, right? But what if the outcome of that does have a racial bias? In other words, more black and brown people start going away for longer sentences. Does that change your mind or no?
No, I mean, because again, it's we would focus on fentanyl. That's the epidemic right now. So it would specifically be targeted towards fentanyl, especially the people that manufacture it. I would say, like, at that point, I mean, I don't know if it would pass constitutional muster, but I'd be in support of a life sentence. If you're the one making it, those are the ones we need to uproot. And then after that, we target, the wholesale distributors, the street dealers, probably not as harsh, but we just need to take a more pragmatic approach to this, and having mandatory minimums depending on also what level within the market, you were involved. Again, you're manufacturing this, I would be in support of a life sentence, because you're the one, you're the source of this.
So let me ask my audience for a second. If you're enjoying this conversation, do me a favor, click that like button so we can get around this. If you want to hear what John is doing, head over to johncastro.com or follow him on Twitter at RealJohnACastro. If you want to support this show, you can by super chatting. Super chat from Larry Sharp YouTube. That's awesome. And if you're watching on Twitter, do me a favor, retweet this right now. John, do you have a few more minutes for a few more questions or no?
Oh, yeah, absolutely.
Okay. Let me grab a couple more. Patty asked an important question. She says, what do we do to help working homeless in areas with no homeless shelters and or full motels? What most people don't realize is a big chunk of the homeless population is actually working poor. Obviously, we know of the homeless people who have either mental illness or addiction problems. Obviously, we know about those, but there's also a chunk. And Patty is from Plattsburgh, New York area. So I know her, and she is trying to work with people who are basically working poor, who can't make enough to literally have a place to live someplace. And that's a chunk of our homeless. In New York City too, generally speaking, though, in New York City versus smaller towns, in New York City, there's usually enough motels, hotels, and housing for the working poor. They're usually able to be satisfied. Not always, but usually. You leave big cities like New York City, it's a whole lot tougher.
Yeah. I mean, this has been one of my biggest things, is how much we send overseas. Like, we'll just sometimes write a check for $3 billion, to the Sudan or some random place that, and I get where that's coming from, right? America, wants to be altruistic, wants to show that they care about the world, wants to be good stewards of their leadership and the position that, that we've been blessed with. But at the same time, we have problems here, and I see where she's coming from. That we need to have a president that writes a $3 billion check to a local NGO that's going to focus on building halfway houses, that's a big thing that I've been in support of as well. I've commented on this publicly before. At one point I considered doing this full time as a nonprofit, and the idea would be, a modern halfway house, that would have something like trade craft workshops and things like that, where people could learn different trades, whether it's electrician, plumber, things like that. But it would be run very militaristically, almost like a military barracks, right? So they wouldn't be able to just be there and just kind of like freeload and stuff. They'd be expected, to have checks and making sure their beds are made, and it's really to kind of be like almost like, how to be a productive citizen 101 boot camp. So I would say that we probably part of the public works project, that should be a big part of it as well, to address that.
I think in Patty's case, if I understand what Patty's saying is, I'm not sure the person or the families in this case would necessarily require a boot camp. And what I mean by that is they are working, right? They just aren't making enough money, if that makes any sense, right? Many of them actually have families. Many of them have children. And if they have to go to a shelter, sometimes they can't bring their pets because the shelter doesn't allow pets. So now you lose a part of your family, particularly if you have children. That can be devastating for a child who doesn't have much connection anyway, and now loses their pet on top of it. Sometimes if women want to get a place, they have to abandon their children, or they can't no place. This is a truth. This happens across, I'm assuming across the country. I know it happens in New York State. I'm assuming it happens across the country, to where now if I want to get into a shelter, I literally have to abandon my children to CPS to get us both to have some form of shelter, or be divorced so that I can qualify, right? So any of these things begin to happen sometimes. I think that's the frustration, if that makes any sense.
Yeah. I would say probably a big part of that as well is something that I picked up in California when I was out there talking with a lot of voters is, the housing crisis that's out there, because they also have a homeless crisis out there as well.
Yes.
And what
theirs is worse than ours. Ours is bad, but theirs is worse.
Yeah. What I found there after studying that extensively, and I haven't studied the New York problem as extensively as California, but if it's analogous, I would say that it also has to do with out there, the the Democrats that are in control and the liberals, they're all in support of wanting to help homeless people, but not building more homes, because it's going to devalue their home, right? And their mega mansion. And so they're just like, well, no, I mean, I don't want, I support the poor, but, I don't want an apartment building in my neighborhood, that's going to drive down the cost or price of my home. And so they unify and they go to their city council or their counties, and they basically lobby very hard to shut down any projects like that, or to put so much red tape that it's impossible to build new homes and new apartment complexes. So what I found is it's actually that's the problem. It's a little bit hypocritical on the part of liberal Democrats, because on the one end they want to help homeless people, but not give them what they actually need, which is a home. And so I'd want to study the New York issue a lot closer to kind of try to see like.
Well, no. If you can solve California, you can solve all of them. That's fine. That's the word. We have a bad problem. And Patty's right. It's a bad problem, but California's is worse than ours. If you can fix California, you got them all done. We're good. Just that's fine. Like, that's the worst one of them all.
Here in Texas, it's crazy. I'll be driving down the highway and I see them starting on an apartment complex, and all of a sudden next week, it's done. And, there's a sign out front that's just like, open house next week. I'm like, what the hell? Like, what? How did that happen? Well, there's no red tape. That can't, that is impossible. So I have a neighbor recently moved 2 years ago from California, and she told me that is unheard of in California. You'll see a project going for 4 or 5 years before it's done, because there's so many inspectors that come in and, oh, this is wrong. And, oh, you need to read.
It is actually one of the reasons why some of the big podcasters left California and New York, because they wanted to build out new studios. Mm-hmm. So, why does someone like Joe Rogan leave California? Why does Glenn Beck leave New York? Why does Dave Rubin leave California? Because they wanted to build out new facilities, and it would have taken them years in those states. They got it knocked out. All three went to Texas. No, I'm sorry. Rubin went to Florida. The other two went to Texas. They went there, got knocked out in a year. All done, set up, completely all set. You're correct. And that's, I would rather have, people being able to build in our state.
Yeah, absolutely. So, yeah, that could be a big part of it. And if it is, then, that's something that I'd want to look at. And, that's something where, I would say more libertarian minded, conservatives, and with with liberal Democrats, I feel you could get across to them just by pointing out their hypocrisy. You know, I recently saw an episode that touched on this topic by, you know, John Oliver, you know, very, very big liberal that, you know, with the, I like his shows, you know, because they get really into the issues and stuff like that. Oh, there's a little bit of bias, but, you know, he talked on this specific issue, but I felt like, well, one thing there was another person from YouTube that called out the hypocrisy with liberal Democrats too on this specific issue. So, so yeah, I'd want to look into that, because a lot of times we don't realize what is the policy that's resulting in this that's hurting us, you know. So yeah.
You let me go to Joe, who asked, deschedule cannabis as president.
Oh, absolutely, without a doubt. Yeah, I mean, I'll just be 100% honest. I've never understood why marijuana is illegal. It's ridiculous. It has medicinal purposes. By statutory definition, it shouldn't even be on Schedule 1. But of course, Congress did it, so, you know, it can't really do anything about that. But no, absolutely, I support total and complete. Cannabis to me is just a plant like strawberries, you know. Now I think it's more like, I take that back. It's more like tobacco. I think it should be regulated. I think it should be 18 or older. It should be like alcohol. You can't use it while operating a vehicle or heavy machinery. But can you do it in the privacy of your home? Yeah. Can you do it in a restaurant or an airplane? No, of course not. You can't even smoke a cigarette there. So again, you know, it's just like alcohol too, right? You can't drink and then just wander down the street, you know, drunk. So same thing, you know, you can't go publicly intoxicated, you know, or under the influence of marijuana in the public. So again, something to do in the privacy of your home. Absolutely, even for recreational purposes.
Great, good. So I want to make sure that people know that if you like what you see, then please click that like button. It does matter. It is important. If you want to follow John, please, you can absolutely head up to johncastro.com or follow him on Twitter at Real John A. Castro on Twitter. If you watch this on Twitter, please retweet this. It does matter. John, I want to say thank you so much for giving me an hour of your time today. I appreciate it.
Yeah, you're welcome. Thank you for having me.
For everyone else who's watching, thank you so much for giving me a chunk of your evening. I hope it was educational for you. You see something interesting. I will be on tomorrow from 4 to 8 doing a massive fundraiser so that we can get ballot access in New York. Yes, John, I'm talking about ballot access. So yes, we're about ballot access tomorrow from 4 to 8. I will see you all